Which president's New York Times obituary stated he was the most unpopular public man that had ever held any office in the United States? James Polk, William Taft, or John Tyler? John Tyler stated that he was the most unpopular public man that had ever held any office in the United States. Like, comment, subscribe, see you next time. How many presidents were lawyers? 6, 27, or 18? There are 27 presidents were previously lawyers. Which amendment to the U.S. Constitution limits the number of times a person may be president? 9th Amendment, 16th Amendment, or 22nd Amendment? On this day in 1951, the 22nd Amendment was ratified, limiting the number of terms served by the president. Who was the only U.S. president to serve 2 discontinuous terms? Franklin D. Roosevelt, Grover Cleveland, or Andrew Jackson? Stephen Grover Cleveland was an American lawyer and politician who served as the 22nd and 24th President of the United States. Who was the President of the Constitutional Convention? James Madison, John Adams, or George Washington? The President of the Constitutional Convention was George Washington. What amendment prohibits imposing poll taxes? 8th Amendment, 20th Amendment, or 24th Amendment? On January 23, 1964, the United States ratified the 24th Amendment to the Constitution, prohibiting any poll tax in elections for federal officials. This U.S. President's Secret Service code name was Renegade. Abe Lincoln, George W. Bush, or Barack Obama? President Barack Obama becomes renegade on U.S. Secret Service list. NATO is an intergovernmental military alliance between how many European and North American countries? 120, 60, or 30? NATO is an intergovernmental military alliance between 30 European and North American countries. What organization began at the end of World War I? Potsdam Conference, League of Nations, or United Nations? League of Nations, an organization for international cooperation established on January 10, 1920, at the initiative of the victorious Allied powers at the end of World War I. What amendment to the Constitution gave women the right to vote? 10th Amendment, 19th Amendment, or 20th Amendment? Passed by Congress June 4, 1919, and ratified on August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote. What political party's logo is a donkey? Democratic or Republican? The Democrats are represented by a donkey. This president's Secret Service code name was Lancer. John F. Kennedy, Richard Nixon, or Teddy Roosevelt? John F. Kennedy's Secret Service codename was Lancer. What party was on the losing end of the most lopsided presidential race in U.S. history, in terms of electoral votes? Whig Party, Democratic, or Republican? In terms of electoral votes, Republican Party was on the losing end of the most lopsided presidential race in U.S. history. This president's Secret Service code name was Deacon. Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, or Woodrow Wilson? President Jimmy Carter's Secret Service code name was Deacon. Which organization, established as a military counterweight to the Soviet military presence in Eastern Europe during the Cold War, formed a cooperative bond with Russia in 2001 to address arms control and terrorism? NATO, Non-Aligned Movement, or United Nations? NATO, military alliance established by the North Atlantic Treaty, which sought to create a counterweight to Soviet armies stationed in Central and Eastern Europe after World War II. What parties was the first to have a woman on the presidential ticket? Democratic or Republican? Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton became the first woman nominated for president by a major party after winning a majority of pledged delegates in the 2016 Democratic Party primaries. In 1912, what dissident political faction nominated former U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt for the presidency? Dixiecrats, Republican Party, or Bull Moose Party? The Bull Moose Party was a third party in the United States formed in 1912 by former President Theodore Roosevelt. What First Lady is thought to have been responsible for making her husband's political views more conservative? Edith Roosevelt, Barbara Bush, or Nancy Reagan? The First Lady Nancy Reagan thought to have been responsible for making her husband's political views more conservative. Which U.S. president's refusal to support U.S. Supreme Court decisions led to the Trail of Tears? Theodore Roosevelt, John Quincy Adams, or Andrew Jackson? President Andrew Jackson declined to enforce the Supreme Court's decision, thus allowing states to enact further legislation damaging to the tribes. Which U.S. president's acting First Lady was his niece? Calvin Coolidge, Martin Van Buren, or James Buchanan? Harriet Rebecca Lane Johnston acted as First Lady of the United States, for her uncle James Buchanan. Who was the first Secretary General of the United Nations? Trygve Lie, Dag Hammarskjöld, or Kurt Waldheim? Trygve Lie was elected as the first Secretary General of the United Nations. Which U.S. First Lady rescued a portrait of George Washington from the White House when British troops occupied and burned Washington, D.C., in August 1814? Dolly Madison, Elizabeth Monroe, or Abigail Adams? On this day in 1814, First Lady Dolly Madison saves a portrait of George Washington from being looted by British troops during the War of 1812. Which future U.S. president made the Checkers speech in 1952? Adlai Stevenson, Dwight D. Eisenhower, or Richard Nixon? Richard Nixon made the Checkers speech in 1952? Which U.S. presidential candidate holds the record for the most second-place finishes? Henry Clay, William Jennings Bryan, or Adlai Stevenson? William Jennings Bryan holds the record for the most second-place finishes. Which U.S. First Lady participated more in political affairs, including weekly business lunches with the President and occasional attendance at cabinet meetings, than her predecessors? Rosalind Carter, Eleanor Roosevelt, or Michelle Obama? U.S. First Lady Rosalind Carter participated more in political affairs, including weekly business lunches with the President and occasional attendance at cabinet meetings, than her predecessors. The United States has the oldest written national constitution in operation. True or false? The answer is true. The first president to be impeached by the House of Representatives belonged to which of these U.S. political parties? Democratic or Republican? The first president to be impeached by the House of Representatives belongs to the Democratic Party. Which amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits cruel and unusual punishment? First Amendment, Eighth Amendment, or 10th Amendment? The Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution states, "Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted." Which U.S. president issued the Emancipation Proclamation? Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, or Ulysses S. Grant? President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863, as the nation approached its third year of bloody civil war. Which U.S. president helped found the Democratic Party? Martin Van Buren, George Washington, or John F. Kennedy? Martin Van Buren was an American lawyer and statesman who served as the 8th President of the United States and a founder of the Democratic Party. What president's political movement is known as Jacksonian democracy? George Jackson, Andrew Jackson, or Henry Jackson? Jacksonian democracy dominated by the controversial presidency of Andrew Jackson. Which amendment to the U.S. Constitution gives the right to bear arms? Second Amendment, 12th Amendment, or 5th Amendment? The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution protects the right to keep and bear arms. GOP refers to which of these U.S. political parties? Republican or Democratic? The Republican Party, also referred to as the GOP, is one of the two major contemporary political parties in the United States. Who is considered the father of the U.S. Constitution? Andrew Jackson, Thomas Jefferson, or James Madison? James Madison is known as the father of the Constitution because of his pivotal role in the document's drafting as well as its ratification. Which amendment to the U.S. Constitution grants freedom of religion, speech, and the press? Second Amendment, Fifth Amendment, or First Amendment? First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press.